Hey everybody, happy November 3rd. This is my second installment of my series on leadership. This is part 1B, and we're still talking about authority. So, in my last video, I discussed the definition of authority, definitions of authority, and we also looked at the four theories of authority as well. So if you want to see what those are about, take a look at part 1A. How is authority implemented in society? So in a nutshell, there are three types of three major parts of society. There's the person, the individual, and that's how in society a person would lead themselves. So every human being is required to lead themselves. Second unit in society is the family unit. So that's the you're leading others, and so in a basic form. So however you define family, it's a small it's a small unit. So the first one, the person is the smallest unit of authority structure. Leading yourself is the smallest unit of authority structure. A family unit is you're either being led by or leading those that are directly connected to you. So it can be, and people, I see it. I have friends that I consider family, and but it's just that basic unit of being led and leading others. And then, of course, the last one is society itself. So it's led by or leading more complex structures like teams or companies or states even or countries. So you see, and I'm sure, I'm sure there's, a lot more to this. I'm not going to dive into that. This is going to be a 15-minute video. It's pretty hard to cover everything, but that's basically how I see authority implemented in those three basic structures. There's the person, the family unit, and more complex like team or organizations. And I'm not going to get into what a family is or whatever. It's just a lot less complex than a company, more complex than the individual. So one thing to be aware of is that leading, when you lead and being led, you require boundaries. I mean, there are boundaries into, if you want structure, then there's going to be boundaries, just by definition. So the boundaries are there to define purpose and direction. And so, so for example, you got, even with yourself, you have boundaries. I will never do this. I will never do that. One thing I can't stand is broccoli. I will never. You just made a rule for yourself. I will never eat broccoli. I will never shave my head bald. There you are. And the other thing about boundaries is they define acceptable behavior that allows completion of those goals. So you got to have you have a purpose and a direction you want to go in as a person or as a family or as a company or as a state. But then you then define what kind of behavior is required to do that. In an individual level, it's a lot simpler, of course. You have certain sets of values and personal rules that you have that dictate your behavior so that you can get something done, right? I want to lose 25 pounds, in 6 months. And to do that, I will do this and that, and then you adhere to it by those rules. And so boundaries, whether you're an individual or in a family or a large organization, it requires good communication and good relationship. Well, as a person, you need to know who you are. So how does that mean good communication relationship if it's just you? Well, that means you need to be good with yourself. You need to understand yourself. You need to find out how you tick. You need to find out what your values are and see if that you adhere to your own values. And there's a thing called positive self-talk and negative self-talk. You can talk yourself out of doing something. So there's a communication within yourself that can affect your goals in your life. But on a larger level, good communication, good relationship with your team, with your family, with your partner, all that stuff come into play. However, from time to time, when the behavior is counterproductive to the goals stated, then rules, or another word for rule is laws, are required to change that behavior, redirect it. On a personal level, that might mean you as a person submitting yourself to a third entity to assist you. So if you're not satisfied with the direction you're going, in 6 months you gained 10 pounds rather than lost 25. Well, then you have to do something about it. How do you do that? There's a consequence to that. You disobeying your own rules or your own boundaries. If you really want to do this, you place yourself under some authority to help you do that. And then you submit to their rules to help you with your goal that you want to achieve. However, on a larger level, if you run a company or you're managing or leading a team, if behavior becomes counterproductive, then you have to deal with that. Otherwise, it'll change your direction and where you want to go, or slow you down. So then you introduce a rule or a law, and then once you introduce a rule or a law, there automatically there will need to be accountability or consequences when those rules or laws are broken. Otherwise, it will be an unproductive rule. Now, my opinion on this is that the less rules there are, the better. Whenever you have a law or rule, someone will break it. Someone will not follow it, and then everyone else who's been involved with that rule, they all look at who the leader is and say, "What are you going to do about this? You made this rule, and now Joe Blow isn't following that rule." There needs to be something happen, a consequence to that. Which is why I'm a big believer in less rules, the better. You're better off having everybody 100% on side, so to speak, and a system in place so you don't make a rule. Because if you start leading by rules and you start leading by laws, then you're less of a team, I think. You're less of a cohesive group, and it actually can become counterproductive after a while. If a manager or leader goes down that road, then you heard the old saying of lead by carrot or stick. Well, if you're like your leader who leads by stick and is always bringing up rules, then you'll find that the quality of work will decline. You'll lose more staff. People will start to leave because by nature, human beings don't like rules. By nature. So you're way better off trying to bring the team alongside, or that person who broke the rule, bring them alongside and find out why, and to get to the reasons for it. It might be a bad rule. You got to be open to that. It might be something really stupid. At the time it was good, maybe. But maybe it's time to get rid of the rule. Not every rule or law is eternal, you know? And so you have to be open. A good leader will do that. And hear and listen to their team and get feedback on that. But really, the best way to make a rule, if you're going to, is to involve the team in the rule making. Make sure everyone's in agreement. Make sure that there's logic behind it, and it tests your ability to reason with it. So you become less reactive when you involve your team. Less, it gives you time to set your emotions aside, and not take it personally when someone breaks a rule you made. That's one of the flaws in a lot of managers. They take it personal, and it can't be personal. But let's say you come to a conclusion that the rule is needed and it is something that absolutely needs to be dealt with, and then every consequence, I believe, should be redemptive in nature. That means that the consequences to rules being broken should always have in mind to redeem that person, to allow them to redeem themselves, to make it right. So the consequence, it might be punitive in some ways, but it should always be done in such a way that you gain a good employee out of that, or a good friend, or that they see the light, so to speak, and that you as a manager can learn from it as well. Ultimately, if a person decides that they're not part of your team and they just can't reconcile themselves with the direction you're going, and so then they have, and then they can leave voluntarily or not, by consequence. So I guess I'm heading on almost 13 minutes now. So that's my little blurb about authority and how it's implemented, and starts with you as the individual leading yourself, and then leading those who you care and are close to you, or being led by them, and then on to society. Society as we know it wouldn't function without boundaries. Otherwise, it's not society. If there was all chaos in the world and everything went to hell in a handbasket and all countries shut down and we had anarchy, you would still have structure and authority within that anarchy. We don't like rules as human beings, but we can't live without them. We even give rules to ourselves. Anyways, that's the conclusion. Till next time, God bless, and see you.